The sun above Kepler 442b had been dying for 1,000 years. To the Cathari people who called this world home, it meant everything was coming to an end. Kitonali brushed her scaly hand across the coral wall of her home. Once, these walls pulsed, with life, glowing soft blue in the morning light. Now they felt cold and brittle. Cracks ran through the organic structures that had sheltered her people for generations. "Mother, my food tastes wrong again," whispered her daughter, Salis. The young Cathari held her stomach, wincing. Purple spots had appeared on her neck last week, the first signs of star sickness. Outside, the dead city stretched for miles. What used to be gardens of living coral trees now stood as gray skeletons. The bioluminescent flowers that once danced in the breeze hung lifeless from twisted branches. The city had been a work of art, grown not built, shaped by their ancestors, over centuries. Now it was dying just like everything else. Elder scientist Vorthka spent his days in the archives deep underground. The stone walls here stayed cool, protected from the sun's poisonous rays. He worked frantically, trying to save what he could of their history, genetic samples, cultural records, art forms, anything that might preserve their people's memory. "The radiation levels jumped again today," reported his assistant Jithara. She was young for a scientist, barely past her first century. Her golden eyes held worry beyond her years. Vorthka nodded grimly. He'd been tracking the star's death for decades. Their sun had started expanding, then contracting, throwing deadly particles across their solar system. At first, the Cathari had adapted. They'd grown the coral cities deeper underground. They'd modified their crops to handle more radiation. But nature had limits, and they'd reached them. In the council chambers, arguments raged daily. Some wanted to stay and fight, believing they could somehow save their world. Others pushed for evacuation, though they had no ships capable of interstellar travel. The Cathari had always been builders and growers, not explorers. "We could try the deep caves," suggested Counselor Methva. "Our ancestors survived the great storms there. The caves won't help this time," Vorthka explained patiently. He'd run the calculations hundreds of times. "The radiation penetrates everywhere now. We have maybe 5 years before even the deepest caverns become uninhabitable." Young Cathari no longer played in the streets. Their parents kept them inside, trying to delay the inevitable. The star sickness was spreading faster among children. Their bodies couldn't handle the radiation like adult Cathari could. Schools closed as teachers fell ill. The future of their race was slipping away, one day at a time. The coral cities had been more than homes. They were living partners. Each family's dwelling grew according to their needs, healing injuries, purifying air and water. The Cathari and their cities had evolved together over millions of years. Now both were failing together. Vorthka visited the Grand Archive, where their most precious knowledge was stored. The walls here glowed faintly with bioluminescent symbols, recording their people's entire history. How they'd first learned to speak with the coral, how they'd survived ice ages and asteroid impacts, how they'd built a civilization based on harmony with nature. "Will any of this survive?" asked Jithara, running her fingers over the glowing texts. "We're preparing seed archives," Vorthka replied, "small containers that could preserve our genetic codes and basic knowledge. If we can't save our people, perhaps someday another species might learn from what we were." The irony wasn't lost on him. The Cathari had always believed in the balance of nature. They took only what they needed, gave back more than they consumed. They'd lived as perfect caretakers of their world, yet nature itself was killing them now. In the hospitals, healers worked overtime. Traditional medicines were failing as the sick grew weaker. The coral-based treatments that had cured every known disease for centuries couldn't fight radiation poisoning. Families gathered around dying relatives, sharing final songs and stories. Salis came to Vorthka's laboratory one afternoon, her mother trailing behind. The spots on her neck had spread to her arms. She was barely 50, a child by Cathari standards. "Will we all die?" she asked simply. Vorthka knelt to her level. Through the thick stone walls, he could feel their dying sun burning overhead. He wanted to lie to give her hope. But the Cathari valued truth above comfort. "We might," he said gently. "But we won't stop fighting, and we won't be forgotten." That night, gazing through the observatory's reinforced glass at their angry orange, Sun Forthka made a decision. The Cathari had never asked for help from other species. They'd always been self-sufficient, proud of their independence. But pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. Tomorrow, they would send their first message to the stars, a desperate plea from a dying race hoping someone somewhere might care enough to answer. The message burst from Kepler 442b like a scream in the dark. For the first time in their history, the Cathari had broken their code of silence. Elder, Scientist Vorthka watched the transmission rocket into space, carrying their desperate plea to anyone who might listen. "It's done," he whispered to Jithara. They'd packed everything into that signal, their story, their plight, even samples of their music and poetry. Anything that might touch another species' heart. Days turned to weeks. The Cathari waited. Finally, an answer came. The first response arrived from the Quellian Empire, those masters of quantum space who controlled 3 entire star clusters. Their ambassador, a being of pure energy, materialized in the council chambers as a shimmering hologram. "Greetings, lesser beings," the Quellian spoke, its voice like thunder. "We have received your request. After careful consideration, we must decline. The Quellians have no interest in primitive biological forms. Your extinction is merely the natural order asserting itself." The hologram flickered and vanished. Counselor Methva's hands trembled with anger. "Natural order? We're talking about an entire civilization." But the Quellians were already gone, their response echoing in the empty council chamber. The Cathari had been dismissed like insects, their billions of years of culture worth nothing to beings who considered themselves gods. A week later, the Void Walkers responded. These ancient entities had existed since the galaxy's birth, living in the empty spaces between stars. Their representative appeared as a shifting shadow, neither solid nor completely immaterial. "Your suffering is noted." It spoke in a voice like the whisper of dying stars. "But all things return to the void eventually. Your fear of ending shows you still cling to the illusion of permanence. We do not interfere with the universe's natural cycles." Once again, the visitor departed without offering help. The Cathari were left to contemplate their illusion of permanence as their children continued to sicken. Hope flickered when the Nexus Coalition sent an envoy. These traders dealt with every species in the galaxy, buying and selling anything of value. Surely they would see opportunity where others saw only tragedy. Zeph Nara, a 6-armed merchant, scuttled into the council chambers. Her scales gleamed, with embedded jewels, each one representing a successful deal. She examined holographic displays of Kepler 442b, calculating rapidly. "Your world has some interesting minerals," she mused. "But extraction costs would be prohibitive with all that radiation. Your biotechnology is impressive but hardly unique. The Florans of Sector 7 produce similar coral-based materials at half the cost." She turned to leave, then paused. "If you had fusion drives or quantum processors to trade, we might discuss refugee transport. But biological curiosities, no demand for those in our markets." The Cathari watched her shuttle depart, taking their last hope with it. They weren't even worth exploiting. More responses trickled in over the following months. The crystalline architects claimed their perfect geometric minds couldn't comprehend chaotic biological concerns. The hive mind of the swarming void replied, with silence. They had no concept of individual death or suffering. Some species didn't bother responding at all. The machine intelligence of the Steel Dawn considered organic life obsolete. The energy parasites of the dark cloud saw the Cathari's situation as merely another feeding opportunity. In the hospitals, the situation worsened. Sally's now spent most days in bed, too weak to play. Her mother, Kato Nali, had sold everything she owned to buy radiation medicine on the black market. Nothing helped. "Why won't anyone care?" Salis whispered one evening. "Are we that different?" From them? Keto smoothed her daughter's scales, trying to hide her tears. How could she explain that in a galaxy full of wonders, their small world simply didn't matter? That advanced civilization saw them as curiosities at best. Vermin. At worst, Vorthka continued monitoring the communications array, hoping against hope. Each new response felt like a dagger to his heart. The galaxy was full of life, full of incredible civilizations, but none of them cared about a dying race on the edge of nowhere. The Stellar Confederation sent a form letter. We regret to inform you that refugee assistance is currently limited to member species. Your application for emergency membership has been denied due to insufficient technological development. Even species that had once faced extinction themselves showed no sympathy. The reborn of Kepler 90b had survived their own stellar catastrophe, but now they jealously guarded their hard-won knowledge. We earned our survival through suffering, their message stated coldly. Let the Cathari do the same. As the months passed, desperation set in. Some Cathari began to believe they deserved abandonment, that they'd failed some cosmic test. Others grew angry, cursing the heartless civilizations that watched their extinction like entertainment. Vorthka refused to give up. Late at night, he composed new messages trying different approaches. He appealed to logic, to emotion, to self-interest. He offered their entire technological base, their genetic heritage, their very souls in exchange for evacuation. The responses grew fewer. The galaxy had heard their plea and found it wanting. The silence stretched between the stars, broken only by their dying sun's radiation. Then, just as Vorthka prepared the final archive, the last record of Cathari civilization, something unexpected happened. A new signal reached their world, originating from an obscure star system called Sol. The transmission was crude, inefficient, obviously from a primitive civilization, but it was responding to their distress call. In broken, translated Cathari, the message said simply, "We hear you. We're coming." For the first time in months, Vorthka allowed himself to hope. Perhaps somewhere in the vast, uncaring galaxy, someone still remembered what compassion meant. The message from Sol System arrived during the darkest period of the Cathari's despair. For 6 months, their pleas had echoed across the galaxy, met with only silence or rejection. Vorthka was preparing for another sleepless night when his assistant Jeeth Ara burst into the archives. "Elder, you need to see this immediately." The translation matrix was still processing the crude signal. Unlike the elegant quantum transmissions from advanced civilizations, this one used primitive radio waves that took years to travel between stars. The beings sending it called themselves humans, and their message was strange. "Greetings, people of Kepler 442b, the message began in choppy, translated Cathari. "We received your distress call. We know what it's like to face extinction. We have solutions. Please respond. We want to help." Vorthka's mandibles clicked in confusion. Humans? Never heard of them. Run a galactic database search. The results were underwhelming. The human species inhabited a single world in a backwater solar system. They had no faster-than-light travel, no energy manipulation abilities, no quantum technology. Their most advanced ships barely reached their outer planets. They can't even leave their solar system, Jithara observed. How could they possibly help us? But attached to the message was something unexpected: detailed schematics. Plans for massive ships designed to evacuate entire populations. The designs were crude by galactic standards but showed remarkable ingenuity. More importantly, they worked within physical laws that the Cathari understood. The next day, a second message arrived. This one included a name, Dr. Min-hee Kim, speaking, "For something called the United Nations Crisis Response Team. We know our technology seems primitive," Dr. Kim's message stated, "but we've survived our own near extinctions, supervolcanoes, ice ages, asteroid impacts. Each time we found ways to preserve our people. Let us share our experience." What followed was fascinating. The humans sent detailed accounts of how they'd survived global catastrophes. During the Toba supervolcano eruption, small groups had sheltered in caves and maintained genetic diversity through careful planning. When the Younger Dryas climate shift threatened their early civilizations, they developed new agricultural techniques and migration strategies. Most intriguingly, they described their generation ship projects, theoretical designs for massive vessels that could sustain entire populations during interstellar journeys. Though they'd never built such ships, humans had spent decades perfecting the concepts. The Cathari Council was skeptical. "These are just theories," Counselor Methva pointed out. "They can't even test their designs in space." But Dr. Kim's next message changed everything. She introduced herself as a xenobiologist and atmospheric engineer. "We've been studying your biological data from your distress signals," she explained. "We believe we can modify our generation ship designs for your species' needs." The human proposals were audacious. They wanted to build not one but dozens of ships, each capable of carrying millions of Cathari. The vessels would use closed-loop ecosystems, artificial coral gardens, and radiation shielding that could protect passengers during century-long journeys. "But how?" Vorthka asked in his reply. "You don't have the materials or technology to build such vessels." Dr. Kim's response revealed the scope of human ambition. Earth's leaders had called an emergency session of their United Nations. Billions of humans were already mobilizing. Mining operations on Mars would be expanded. Asteroid belts would be harvested for raw materials. Every spacefaring nation was contributing resources. "We're converting our entire space mining fleet," explained Captain Jiwoo Park, a grizzled asteroid miner from Earth's Luna colonies. "My crews are working triple shifts to retrofit our ships into transport vessels. It won't be pretty, but it'll work." The humans shared video messages of their preparations. Thousands of factories retooled their production lines. Scientists worked around the clock to solve problems of life support, radiation shielding, and food production for an alien species. Most remarkably, millions of humans volunteered for the mission despite never expecting to see Earth again. Young Salas, now too weak to leave her bed, listened to the translated messages with wonder. "They're really trying to save us, aren't they, Mother?" Keto Nali nodded, tears streaming down her scales. The humans were offering something no other species had given: genuine compassion. Not cold calculation or diplomatic courtesy, but real empathy for fellow beings facing extinction. Dr. Min-hee Kim sent personal messages to various Cathari scientists. "I study alien biology on Earth," she explained. "Extremophiles in deep ocean vents, bacteria that thrive in radiation. Life finds ways to survive. We'll find a way for you too." The human approach was refreshingly direct. While the Quellians had spoken in cosmic riddles and the Void Walkers had pontificated about universal truth, humans asked practical questions. What did the Cathari need? How could they help? What were the exact challenges? "We're not the smartest species in the galaxy," admitted Dr. Kim, "but we're really good at solving problems when lives are at stake. We've saved refugees from wars, natural disasters, even helped preserve endangered species. This is just bigger." As days passed, more details emerged. The human plan wasn't theoretical. It was already in motion. Construction had begun on the first prototype ship. Teams of human engineers worked with Cathari biotechnologists through long-distance communication, adapting human technology to support coral-based ecosystems. The most shocking revelation came from Captain Jiwoo. "We're launching everything we have. Every ship, every resource. If this mission fails, humanity might not survive either. Our economy, our space program, we're gambling it all on saving you." Vorthka stared at the message display. "They're risking their entire civilization. For us?" That night, he drafted a response that would bind the Cathari to humanity. "We accept your offer. But know this: if we survive, your people will have earned our eternal gratitude. What you're giving us cannot be repaid." Dr. Kim's response was simple. Survival isn't something you repay. It's a gift shared freely between people who care about each other. For the first time in a year, the Cathari allowed themselves to hope. Perhaps the galaxy wasn't as cold and uncaring as they'd believed. Perhaps, somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, compassion still had a home. The scale of humanity's rescue operation defied belief. Captain Ji-Woo Park stood on the bridge of the research vessel, Solaris, watching thousands of ships converge around Mars's orbital stations. Each vessel had been transformed from its original purpose. Mining barges became transport ships. Scientific explorers turned into refugee carriers. "Status report," Ji-Woo called out. 1,700 ships reporting ready, replied his communications officer. The lunar shipyards finished the last modifications yesterday. Engineering teams are still installing the coral cultivation bays. Dr. So-Young Lee floated beside him in zero gravity, checking her tablet. As the mission's xenobiologist, she'd spent 2 years studying Cathari physiology through their transmitted data. The biochambers are holding steady. Temperature, humidity, atmospheric composition, everything matches their homeworld specifications. The human fleet looked nothing like the elegant vessels of advanced galactic civilizations. These ships were ugly, functional, cobbled together from spare parts and desperate innovation, but they worked. On Earth, the effort consumed everything. Factories ran day and night producing specialized air filters for alien physiology. Universities shut down regular classes as students and professors joined the rescue project. Families mortgaged their homes to fund the mission. "My daughter asked me why we're helping aliens we've never met," said Chief Engineer Park Hyun-soo during a crew meeting. "You know what I told her? Because that's what humans do." The technical challenges seemed impossible. The Cathari breathed a methane-heavy atmosphere. Their coral cities required specific mineral compositions to survive. They couldn't digest human food, and their waste products were toxic to humans. "We've solved harder problems with less," insisted Dr. So-Young. She'd been working with a team of biologists for months, developing symbiotic organisms that could process Cathari waste into nutrients. "Remember how we terraformed Titan's atmosphere? This is just applied biology. The fuel requirements alone should have killed the mission. To reach Kepler 442b, the fleet needed to push their engines beyond safe limits. The journey would take 30 years, even with their best technology. But humanity had a solution for that too. Nuclear pulse drives," announced Director Min-Wook Choi at a press conference on Earth. "We're essentially riding controlled nuclear explosions across space. It's dangerous, experimental, and absolutely our only option." Volunteers lined up by the millions. The rescue mission would be a one-way trip. The humans going to Kepler 442b would never see Earth again. Their ships lacked the fuel for a return journey. "I'm 57, said Dr. Kwang Min-young, a retired physician who'd volunteered for the medical team. "My kids are grown, my research is done. If I can save alien children, isn't that a better way to spend my remaining years?" The ships launched in waves. Each group carried specialized equipment: hydroponic gardens, fusion reactors, 3D printers, libraries of human knowledge. They also carried samples of Earth's biosphere: seeds, embryos, bacterial cultures, even a few carefully selected animals. Captain Ji-Woo commanded the lead vessel, pushing through interstellar space at speeds that made his instruments scream warnings. Behind him, the human fleet stretched across light years, a fragile chain of hope connecting two dying worlds. "Hull stress is at 97%, reported the ship's engineer. "If we push harder, we'll start losing ships." "Maintain current speed," Ji-Woo decided. They couldn't afford to slow down, not with Cathari lives counting down with each passing day. Back on Earth, the sacrifice continued. The planet's economy teetered on collapse as every available resource went to the rescue mission. Food shortages plagued major cities. Power grids strained under the demand from manufacturing centers. "We're betting everything on this," admitted President Yoon Han during an emergency broadcast. "If this fails, humanity might not survive. But if we don't try, we'll lose something more important than survival: our soul." The journey tested human engineering in ways they'd never imagined. Ships broke down in the void between stars. Crews jury-rigged repairs with whatever materials they had. 3 vessels were lost to equipment failures, their sacrifice marking the deep space route with floating memorials. Dr. So-young monitored the coral cultivation chambers constantly. The Cathari had transmitted genetic templates for their living cities, but growing them required precise conditions. Each mistake meant fewer refugees would survive the evacuation. Batch 7 is looking good, she reported during a ship-wide briefing. The coral polyps are adapting to our artificial minerals. We might actually pull this off. Communication delays made coordination nightmarish. Messages between ships took hours or days to reach their destinations. Orders from Earth were already months out of date when they arrived. The fleet commanders had to make split-second decisions based on outdated information. Captain Jiwoo pushed his crew harder with each passing year. Every day we delay cost Cathari lives, he reminded them during the darkest moments. We're not just delivering supplies, we're racing against time itself. The Cathari watched humanity's approach with growing amazement. These primitive aliens were doing the impossible, sacrificing everything for strangers they'd never met. No advanced civilization in the galaxy had shown such dedication to another species' survival. Estimated arrival, 18 days, announced the navigation officer as Kepler 442b finally appeared on their long-range sensors. The dying star blazed orange-red against the cosmic night, its radiation already claiming ship's electronics. But humanity pressed on, their ramshackle fleet carrying the hopes of two civilizations. Final approach initiated, Captain Jiwoo reported to Earth, knowing his message wouldn't arrive for years. We're going to save them. Both our species deserve that. The gambit that shouldn't have worked was somehow succeeding. Human obstinacy, creativity, and compassion were proving stronger than superior technology or cosmic powers. The rescue fleet entered the Kepler system, ready to snatch an entire civilization from the jaws of extinction. Against all odds, humanity had answered the ultimate call for help. The first human ship broke atmosphere just as the morning rains began on Kepler 442b. These weren't normal rains. They glowed faintly with radiation, the last gift from a dying star. Elder scientist Vorthka watched the crude vessel descend through his observatory window, its heat shields glowing white-hot. They actually came, whispered Jith Ara beside him. All those years of waiting, and they actually came. Captain Jiwoo. Park's ship landed hard in the designated zone outside the capital city. The Cathari had prepared a landing site, though they hadn't expected ships this large or this many of them. Within hours, the sky filled with human vessels, each one different from the others. Dr. So-young Lee was the first human to set foot on Cathari soil. She wore a bulky environmental suit and carried atmospheric sensors, carefully testing the air. Behind her, teams of human engineers began unloading prefabricated structures designed to house Cathari refugees. The meeting between species was awkward at first. The Cathari were tall, graceful beings, with scales that shifted color with their emotions. Humans seemed tiny and soft by comparison, their faces hidden behind plastic visors. We calculated you had maybe 6 months left, Dr. So-young said through her translator device. We need to move fast. Vorthka approached carefully. You've given up everything for us. Your ships, your world, your future. We don't understand why. Captain Jiwoo removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face and kind eyes. Because nobody deserves to die alone in the dark. We've been there. We know what it feels like to be forgotten. The evacuation began immediately. Human teams worked, alongside Cathari engineers, to modify the refugee ships for alien physiology. The coral cultivation chambers Dr. So-young had spent years perfecting proved crucial. They allowed the Cathari to bring pieces of their living cities with them. Young. Salis was among the first evacuees. Now barely able to walk, she was carried to a human medical bay where doctors worked frantically to treat radiation sickness with unfamiliar alien biology. Will they be okay in those metal boxes? Keto Nali asked Vorthka as they watched Cathari, families boarding human ships. The humans have thought of everything, Vorthka assured her. Each ship carries growing chambers for coral cities, food cultures adapted to our needs, even entertainment systems with our music and stories. The Planet's evacuation revealed the true scale of human dedication. Every ship was packed beyond safety limits. Human crew members gave up their quarters to make room for more Cathari. Food was rationed so alien refugees could eat. Some humans volunteered to go into stasis to preserve resources. "We'll make it work," insisted Chief Engineer Hyun Soo when asked about the overcrowding. "We didn't come this far to count heads, we came to save lives." As the evacuation neared completion, something unexpected happened. The Cathari began sharing their knowledge with their rescuers. Elder scientists taught human doctors about biological manipulation. Coral cultivators showed engineers how living matter could be more efficient than machines. "Your binary thinking limits you," explained one Cathari biotechnician to Dr. Soyoung. "Why choose between organic and mechanical? Why not both?" The medical breakthrough came when treating Salis. Human doctors couldn't cure her radiation sickness, but Cathari healers could teach them how their own bodies might adapt. The result was a new kind of medicine, part human technology, part Cathari biology. "She's improving," Dr. Kwang Minjung reported with amazement. "The treatments are actually working. We're learning more about xenobiology in 1 week than our universities taught in decades." The last ships launched as Kepler 442b's sun entered its final death throes. The Cathari refugees watched their homeworld disappear through the viewports, knowing they'd never return. But they weren't looking back anymore. They were looking forward. The journey to humanity's solar system took 32 years. During that time, an unprecedented partnership developed. Cathari biotechnology revolutionized human medicine. Diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia were cured using organic techniques. Human engineering showed the Cathari new ways to manipulate matter and energy. When the fleet finally reached Earth's system, they found a destination waiting for them. Mars had been transformed. Using Cathari bioengineering, humans had grown vast coral cities across the red planet. The atmosphere had been modified to support both species' needs. "Welcome to New Kepler," said Director Min-wook Choi as the first refugee ships entered Martian orbit. "We hope you'll help us make it home." The transformation was incredible. Coral-based air processors turned carbon dioxide into breathable atmosphere. Living buildings grew food and processed waste. The dead red planet bloomed with impossible life. But the real change came in the galactic community. News of humanity's rescue mission spread across the stars. The same civilizations that had ignored the Cathari's pleas now sent ambassadors to these upstart humans. "You did something we thought impossible," admitted a Quellian ambassador during the first Galactic Council meeting that included humans. "You saved an entire species with primitive technology and pure determination." "How?" Dr. Min-hee Kim stood before the assembled representatives of 1,000 species. She looked tiny next to beings of energy and crystal, but her voice was steady. "We saved them because we remembered that every life has value. Not just the strong or the advanced, but everyone deserves a chance to survive." Beside her, Vorthka added, "And we learned that the greatest technology in the universe isn't faster than light travel or energy manipulation. It's compassion." The partnership between humans and Cathari changed everything. Their combined strength created a new galactic power based not on dominance but on cooperation. Other struggling species began reaching out, knowing that help might actually come. Years later, Captain Jiwoo walked through New Kepler's coral gardens with his granddaughter. The old spacer pointed to a monument honoring the rescue mission, a sculpture showing human and Cathari figures holding hands beneath the stars. "We saved them because it was the right thing to do," he explained. "But they saved us too. They showed us what we could become when we worked together." The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most advanced civilizations weren't the ones with the best technology. Sometimes they were the ones who remembered to care. In the end, humanity's gambit had paid off in ways no one expected. They'd gained not just allies but family. And the universe became a little less cold, a little more hopeful, because two species had chosen compassion over indifference. The stars still burned with the same fire, but now they lit the way to something better, a future where no one had to face extinction alone.